You know, it's so hard trying to land this guy. Even though JTH and Nightwing, I'm trying to work on no intros, but I do have another channel, so I'm working on it. You know, you take one thing at a time. So, in school, you have a thing called Finals Week, and that's where we're at with the 2019 LCS, LPL, LEC, and LCK Spring Splits around the world. We don't watch LMS because, well, they don't have any English content. So, all right. So for every single one of these, we're going to do a little bit of a recap, not doing too much on every single series, and then we're going to get to the finals and preview the finals. Now, the only thing that's different with the LEC is because we have to kind of go at it with a different angle because they're going to be potentially two different matchups for the LEC Finals Week taking place this week coming up. So, let's start it this way. LEC playoffs started with Fnatic and Vitality and Splice versus SK. You weren't there doing the predictions with me, but how did you think of those series just really quick? Starting with the SK versus Splice one. That's probably the less interesting one.
I mean, SK got the first game, so I kind of expected their early game play style to counteract again the inability for Splice to do anything in the early game, but they honestly just didn't have the players. There was a complete obvious discrepancy in between the rest of the players on the team. Like, I think Crownshot had a good first game, but beyond that, I think the bot lane was completely outclassed. I'm all
What do you think about the Self-Made's Infinity Edge Rek'Sai?
I mean, I don't understand it. I've never seen it.
I kind of understand it. No, nobody on his team is doing damage. He needs to do the damage.
He needs to solo carry, but I don't know if Infinity Edge is the thing. I've never seen it. I've never seen it in solo queue. I've never seen it anywhere, so I have no idea if it's good or not.
Yeah.
I can't really put too much of an opinion. I can see the concept of wanting to but you're relying on RNG at that point because it is still 25% crit, even if it gives you. I mean, the flat AD is pretty nice, but I would not understand. I don't understand it. Death Stance, maybe some other slightly less tanky but more damage type items would get you something. But I didn't understand the pick, honestly. I'm not gonna say it's bad though because I don't know.
I feel like in the series, Splice were the more polished players. SK were more of the as they call them, like Cinderella stories. The clock struck midnight for them. I felt like going into the series, Splice were the more polished players. They had the stronger players, and I feel like Xerxes could match Self-Made in a best of 5 at least. So
I don't think that's consistent. I mean, Xerxes is obviously worse than Self-Made.
Yeah.
I think this specific series it worked out, but I don't think this would happen consistently in a best of 5.
Yeah. So what did you think about Fnatic versus Vitality?
I don't think that was close at all. That was just, I mean, obviously it wasn't.
It felt like Cabochard was just trying to carry the whole team with him.
Cabochard is the only moderately amazing, decent player at this point. I mean, Juxei is not bad. I still don't want to say that. Still think he's one of the better mid laners in the league, but everybody else was just completely terrible. The bot lane in comparison to last year is even worse. I mean, they've degraded to such an extent that I can't even handle watching them at this point. This is such an early game oriented team, but they're not even good in the laning phase, like this bot lane. So it kind of counteracts their entire team's playstyle.
And someone had talked about what about if you switch Forgiven with Attila?
The problem with that bot lane isn't Attila. I mean, I think that would still be a great upgrade. I mean, maybe I don't know how good Forgiven is right now, but the problem is Jack Troll is the worst player in that lane. I think he's definitely holding back the entire team at this point. I think Attila is still pretty bad himself, but not to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see a replacement, maybe just a replacement bot lane. We could pick up the what was his name? The person who said he wanted the coach for Misfits.
Oh, Jez's.
Jez's Forgiven bot lane. I'd prefer somebody else. I'd prefer a different support, but that's somebody that's willing to go with him.
All right, the next round of the LEC was Fnatic versus Splice and G2 versus Origen.
G2 versus Origen should not have been that one-sided.
See, this is the thing, though. I think going into the series, you got to look at Caps and Wonder being absolute powerhouses in lane, and then they're stronger than their opposition. So at one point during a series, that's going to take precedent of having the stronger players, actually.
Stronger players are not more prevalent inside of best of 5s than they are best of 1s. They're always.
It can depend.
It can't depend. There's no variable where better players are better in best of 5s in comparison to best of 1s. Because in complete honesty, in best of 1s, mechanics are the bigger prevalent thing. In best of 5s, it comes down to coach play, comes down to picks, it comes down to like all of these things that picking up on what they played the previous games. Like you can't I agree that I think that or G2 honestly stepped it up. I think this is the best I've seen them in quite some time.
You know what the best thing about it was? They played Mickey X.
Well, of course. I don't think Mickey... Again, they were playing poorly with Mickey X too.
But that's the thing. I give him the benefit of the doubt because he said he had wrist issues. Like, could you imagine trying to play like at that level with wrist issues? That's like...
I'm not giving anybody the benefit of the doubt. I mean, all I've seen... Like, again, he was playing poorly at the beginning. He should not have played if he had wrist issues. It wasn't like just... Like, he was one of the better supports in the league. I won't deny that. And it wasn't him specifically, but I'm saying even with him, they weren't playing that well. I don't think the variable was him that was keeping them back. I think they were just playing poorly at the end of the split.
Some people thought they trolled because they already locked in first place. They were like, screw it.
I don't believe it. I don't believe that's the case. I think they just started playing poorly. I mean, there's nothing I could say that would say they weren't, but I don't imagine they would.
How do you think Origen played?
I think Origen played
game one
poorly. I mean, again, they had a moderately good game one, and then they fell off the face of the... Like, everybody lost the lane. It wasn't just one... Every single person got stomped in lane, and it was just one-sided to, like, a drastic amount.
Oh, God.
Cole didn't play to his level. I mean, Mithy and
Patrick
were just losing. That shouldn't happen.
To be fair, we did say if G2 were going to win, Perks and Mickey, just all they have to do is just stabilize the lane, too.
Yeah, but they weren't winning.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be happening against this lane. I mean... Wonder, obviously.
He played really He played great.
Expected.
Yeah.
That was expected. Cavs played well. Like
yeah.
Jankos, everybody played well.
Yeah.
It was a complete step up on G2's part, and Origen were just outclassed at this point.
I think
they weren't able to implement any macro because they were just losing too hard.
You watch UFC, right? Or like competitive fighting. There's this little saying back in the day where if you don't play for like a certain amount of time, you're gonna get rusty. They call it ring rust. And if you apply that to League, there's been a lot of times where people
Why is that prevalent in UFC?
Because you know how certain teams get the bye and they don't play for like almost 2 weeks? You see them come back on stage and they're just like rusty. As I like to call it, league rust, like stage rust.
That is prevalent in every single competitive thing.
I know, but I think it really hurt Origen this time around. Not playing for almost 2 weeks, it really showed that they weren't not being acclimated to playing that way again.
I don't think that should be a big issue. They're still doing scrims. They're still doing all this stuff. I'd like to imagine, but they're still playing League. I think the biggest problem with them was they just completely... They were off that day. I mean...
Their mentality was terrible.
Once they lost that first game, I feel like they didn't have it in them anymore. This is pretty much the perfect... What they expected the series to go like, how they wanted it to play. Mm-hmm. And they still ended up losing the first game, and that kind of shot their mentality. And
then, what did you think about Fnatic versus Splice?
I did not like that
Splice kind of exposed them to a certain extent.
No.
Really? You don't think so?
They won a game.
I mean...
That's a game. That's a singular game.
The Fnatic players did say they did play poor.
They did play poor. That was the whole thing about it. Splice didn't expose anybody. They literally just played their same style, and Fnatic didn't finish on them.
They also picked Vagar bot.
Yeah, I mean, if this series, if it goes the way this semis goes, GT is going to 3-0 them. Like, I'm sorry, like, the way they played, Fnatic played in the semis in comparison to G2, it's not even close right now.
Yeah, like, people have to understand, yes, the Origen game was close, but G2 were still playing good in their close game.
Yeah, I think G2 was obviously in comparison to Slice, they're way stronger. Like, that was I'm kind of excited for the Origen versus Fnatic. I'm really happy with this new playoff situation. I really like the way it functions. I think that it should be implemented in, at the very least, NA.
And so now we have... So the reason why I chose to do LEC first, because it's a bit different, because there's 2 different scenarios in which 2 different teams go. So we gotta start with the next match is Fnatic versus Origen. And your predictions for that are going to be?
I think it's going to be 3-2 Fnatic.
God, Lord. Probably.
I mean, Origen is pretty macro-oriented. I think they're pretty decent at that, but they are really severely outclassed in lanes this time.
We also learned this week they're severely outclassed in their mental state between game-to-game adaptation.
I don't think they're that bad. I think that G2 game is kind of a different... Like, we're not going to see that kind of Fnatic in it. But I'm really disappointed in the way Origen played. I think they're not as bad as they showed in that series. Even though I do think G2 was the better team on the day regardless. So now Fnatic has to face Origen. So as I like to do with my predictions, you guys know, let's go by lane. Let's go by the stronger suits for Origen. I think Origen functioned really well off early game stabilization. They focused really well on getting Patrick and Mithy a safe lane. I think that if you put Nukeduck on what he had this week, he was fine. I don't think Nukeduck was the reason why they lost any of the games. Alfari, he felt like he was coming back to his Misfits form, which was good, but it's not better than Wonder or Cavalstar. Thank God he wasn't facing Cavalstar either. He probably lost that too. But I think that if you look at both teams, Fnatic want to play that 1-3-1. They want to kind of
have Nemesis on a mage. They want to have Reckless. Now we've seen last week they want to have Reckless. Rotating out of the lanes and pushing them. And I don't think that it's gonna really work out too well against Origen though. That's the thing. I think that they'll win, but I think their strategy is gonna get countered by Origen doing almost the exact same thing.
Origen's playstyle really isn't similar. I think that Origin functions more so around early game map movements, where so Fnatic revolves around, I think, like kind of trying to push lane advantages and then doing like rotating after that.
Or Brock's early game junglers like Rek'Sai, Nocturne, stuff like that.
That's essentially what happens. It's not team oriented movements where like the support moves around the map. It's more so they play the standard lanes and then Brock's to get stuff going. I think that this is gonna be I think it's going to be pretty close.
Yeah. This time around, I feel like Origin will learn from their mistakes.
I do think Fnatic is going to win this series because of the fact, again, Brock's, Bwipo is playing better than Alfari. I think that's the case right now. I think Bwipo's been playing better than Alfari for pretty much the later half of the split and the playoffs. I think that Cold is better than Brock's on a good day, but not if he plays the way he did in that...
those splice games. Oh my god.
Yeah, there's absolutely no way. I don't see this like Broxa does really well on what he does, but Cold should have the upper hand here. I think that he's the better jungler in general. Even though I do like what Broxa does and he does it well, I don't think that this kind of like he is an early game oriented player, and I do like that he gets the ganks off early. But Cold is just the smarter player. I think his map movements are a little bit cleaner. I think that he does, like, even when he's slightly behind, I still think he plays well, where Brox is the complete opposite. I don't think he plays well from behind. I think that we're going to have to see, this series is probably going to be decided by the jungle/mid. I think that all of these teams are volatile, but I think this is going to be the big deciding factor in how this series goes.
I think the way Alfari stepped up kind of made it a triple threat for Origin last week too. Like he played pretty decent from a lot of his games.
I mean, he played decent to an extent,
but at least he was relevant this time around.
Bwipo is playing pretty well. It's not just decent.
And plus, Bwipo can absorb so much gank pressure too and lane pressure from being camped in his lane too. So let's go by lane by lane. Since Fnatic is facing Origen, Bwipo versus Alfari. You said Bwipo's favorite for Bwipo, right?
Yeah, we're already in the mid lane now.
All right, so mid lane. Are you jungler?
We already did the jungle. I just did that.
I'm gonna say it's probably cold favored. Right? Maybe it's probably cold favored. Nuke Duck and Nemesis.
I think Nemesis has stepped it up drastically. I think
he's playing really well.
I think if we're gonna talk about it, I think he's a top 4 mid laner, maybe top 5. I think that he's definitely in that area at this point, but I do not think that he's better than Nuke Duck because I would say Nuke Duck's probably the second best mid laner in the league.
They went pretty even in the regular split.
The first game of the season.
Yeah, Nuke Duck absolutely obliterated the dude.
I think that was a counter matchup. Galio and Vayne is not very good. But it's still, he played that well. He didn't go too far behind, but Nuke Duck definitely had the upper hand both games.
But the next time around, we'll have to see it. So now the bot lane. Oh god, Regulus and Hillsong are gonna obliterate them.
I don't think so. I mean, they're not an aggressive laning team.
I feel like they can be on specific picks.
Well, that's just, they have to get those picks, I guess, but I don't think they're going to.
Like with Reckless, when he played like Lucian and Sivir and Tristana, we've seen him, aggressively pushing up and always having a CS advantage. Hillsong has always been pretty well with that. He hasn't really been roaming too much this split, but I think the bot lane for Fnatic is still favored in them.
I mean, I agree with that, but again, Mithy is... I mean, Hillsong is playing better than Mithy as it stands right now, but yeah. I do think Mithy is more valuable to his team because he shot calls. Patrick is playing really well, so I don't know I don't know how favored I would say Reckless is here.
Slightly favored toward Fnatic's bot lane.
I wouldn't say that.
It's like a 80-70.
I do think, like, again, this is going to be how they play the lanes. I think that Fnatic is going to attempt to try and absorb pressure because we know that Origen is going to try to make those early game lead. They're either going to try and counteract the supporting like roams and try and like kind of push the advantage because we know that Mithy is going to be playing the Alistar, something similar to that, maybe Rakan or something. But like we could see,
he's definitely taking Rakan. Every time it's open, he's taking it.
Well, we could see
I could see Silver Rakan.
Yeah, I'm saying we could see all of that stuff on Origin. I wouldn't be too surprised if that happened, and that would be something there that, like, again, you can take advantage of that because we know that Mithy is going to attempt to like roam somewhere with the jungler, So maybe they want to push their advantage and pick an early game aggressive bot lane, which would lead them to have to probably pick a bruiser top, and that'd force them into non-scaling mid laner. So, like, it's all dependent on what style Fnatic chooses. I think if they pick the early game aggressive style to try and counteract Origen, they're probably gonna win.
What about that level 1 cheese they always do?
I don't think that's gonna work, but if they try and do this, absorb the pressure that Origen like puts out to them, if they try and do that, I think Origen is gonna take this game because they're the better late game team. I think they might have the slightly worse players in terms of team fighting, but I do think the macro definitely goes in hand with Origen. So I think I'd like to see Fnatic take the step and try and get these early game picks to try and take the the lead, and try I want them to close out in the mid game. I don't want to get to late game because I'm not sure. Well,
we saw Fnatic's late game against Splice in that Jinx game. That looked really sloppy.
On top of the fact, I think they might have the players. Like, they have good enough players to make it work late game, but I do still think that Origen has the edge. So I'm not going to say that Fnatic wins this for sure, because I don't know what kind of picks they're going to pick.
I think it's... I don't want to mention the series because it still hurts my feelings. The TSM Cloud9 series, it's really close. Let's just say that. It's not super favored toward Fnatic, but there's a world in which you could see Origen beating them. Like, it's not like so Fnatic favored that it's not impossible that Origen beats them, right? So now we have to go and look at the finals. So, okay, let's preview it two ways. What if you G2 versus Origen? That's probably the least favorite one. People probably want in the finals, so they want Fnatic in. So let's do G2 versus Origen. I think if G2 face Origen, they're going to beat them even probably the same way.
I think it's going to be a lot less one-sided, because I think that
I'll make it 3-1.
Origen is not going to make the same mistakes they did in that last series, because that's not the type of team they are.
But you also have the factor in G2 is going to improve too.
They're not going to... Okay, the thing about it is G2 can improve on what they know, where so is Origen improves on the mistakes they made.
Yeah, but that means...
G2 has nothing besides getting better at what they did. They're not going to... It's harder to improve when you're the one that won. It's easier to improve when you're the one that was on the receiving end of loss.
Fnatic versus Origen, I'm going to say Fnatic win 3-2. But if they don't, I can see that series definitely going both ways. So you're saying if G2 face Origen, there's a possibility that they'll win maybe one more game than they did before.
I think it'll be a 3-2 for 3-1, 3-2 for G2. I think it won't be as one-sided as last time, but I do think G2 is just too... I mean, the way they're playing, they're too good for them.
And then... if they face Fnatic, that's going to be tough.
I still think that...
because they went 1-1 in the regular split. One game was a blowout. One was one of the best games I ever watched in my life for entertainment. Past 25 minutes, because 25 minutes, man, Fnatic should have easily won that game. This is hard, because you have Jankos, Caps, and Wonder as a triple powerhouse. But Fnatic's triple powerhouse and Nemesis, Brox, and Bwipo, if they can be competent enough to match them, it's going to make the series harder. Because
if they can be confident enough to match them when they're an already outclassed play-wise.
Yes, because in that scenario, if you're already outclassed and being a star player, you have to competently be able to hold them in lane and not lose. That's the thing.
Literally something that's not possible if you're outclassed. It's not the way you need to do it is you need to make these kind of movements around the map, because you're not going to win this laning phase against them.
That's why I said the bot lane. That's why I said the top side for Fnatic is going to have a hard time.
The top side needs to do something instead of just staying in the lane, because if the more they stay in lane, the more they're going to lose. The differences between, like, the goal discrepancy between lanes is going to drastically increase if they don't get something going.
That's why Hillsing and Reckless usually do that for them. They usually always try to shot call them, and try to move the mid game forward.
I'm not sure their shot calling is the strongest suit. I think what they're going to need to do if it comes down to this kind of series, I'm going to have to see what's it called? We're going to have to see Nemesis play something that's kind of roaming oriented.
He's not getting KO against G2. He's probably not getting KO against Origen either.
Nemesis shouldn't get Kale at all, because Kale's terrible mid.
Really?
Kale's garbage mid, dude.
Kale's so good top. You could be RNG and let it sit there to level 16 and then lose. But I digress. If it's G2 versus Fnatic, I'm going to say that G2 wins 3-2. I think that G2 is going to represent Europe for LEC.
I do think so. I didn't think so. At the end of the split, I said Fnatic was just going to stomp. It was going to be a Fnatic versus Origen finals. But G2 has drastically stepped it up at the beginning.
It was close. Almost close. Close. But I think EU is gonna have G2 as the king again. I think that looking toward this split, I think like every good team is gonna have a slump at one point eventually.
See, the thing about it is, it wasn't just a slump. You had seen these types of problems. It was throughout the entire season. Even at the beginning of the season, you knew that their macro
was absolutely atrocious.
It was pretty bad towards the later half. They relied mostly on these laning mistakes like not happening, and they pushed their lead from there. Once they got the lead, they won, and they knew how to close out with the lead. But we saw them not be able to, like their ability to climb back from a deficit was kind of pretty terrible, and they relied on the enemy making mistakes more so as forcing them to make some. I think that if we want it, like if this G2 at the beginning of the year came, they would have probably got 3-1 by Origen, I would say. But at the beginning of the year, G2 was not strong enough to compete with these teams.
I think if you look at toward like I think if you're Europe, you either want Fnatic or G2 going. I don't think you really want Origen going MSI. I think that would be no offense to them, that would be a colossal mistake of Origen going right now as it stands. Even probably after the playoffs, I myself wouldn't want Origen going to MSI.
It would be a little bit. It would be almost just as much of a mistake as letting Cloud9 go.
Oh yeah, he's just throwing like random shade in there, but we don't get a third place match.
I'm really.
Don't talk about the series.
I'm so happy.
My feelings are hurt so bad. But I digress. So I think G2. Who is going to be the new king of Europe? I think it's G2. I said first part of the split power rankings they were going to win the split. Hopefully my predictions are usually like hot and cold. So if G2 face Origen, I'm saying they're going to 3-1 them in the finals. If G2 face Fnatic in the finals, I'm going to say G2 beats them 3-2. Because remember last year, what was the big deciding factor into the spring of last year? It was Caps. Caps was a big deciding factor in that G2 versus Fnatic series. And now G2 has their player. I think in big high pressure situations, Caps plays a lot better than he does in regular split. I think we've seen enough playoff series from this guy to go like this guy's pretty good in playoff series. So
I mean, I don't want to use past precedents. I just think they have better players right now. I don't care. If
stronger players, you said, matters a lot too.
I think that's pretty much the only reason I'm going to give them a hit. I don't want to use the past. He played well last split to say it here.
Dang it! I almost got you to do it.
But I think that Origen is G2. If they play as well as they did in the Origen series, they're going to beat everybody. But I don't think they're consistent enough for that. I could easily see them coming in on an off day. So I'm going to say that they do win. But if they do lose, it's not a gigantic surprise to me.
You just want to say Fnatic's going to win.
I do want to say Fnatic's going to win, but I don't think it's going to happen.
You could say that. You'd be like, hey, Fnatic's going to crush them.
Well, that'd be stupid. I mean, G2 literally looks really good right now.
I mean, but like Fnatic could also come in looking really good too.
Those are variables I'm not going to be able to take in because I'm just going by what's it called.
Yeah. So I'm saying G2 wins the split after this week. G2 is going to be the EU next champion, as I said before. He's saying G2, but he's not really convinced. So you're definitely saying a Fnatic or Origen could probably be the next.
I'm just gonna say it's probably like a 80% chance that G2 wins.
All right, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys #G2 Army.